Ariat has had the pleasure to work with John for over 25 years, and we're honored to have him here. And I know he's excited to talk with all of you and answer your questions. So again, thanks to all of you and to John for being here. We have about 30 or 45 minutes with John, and I would ask that you pick one of your two questions to start with, and then hopefully we'll have time to circle back again and get the second one. So with that, let's go ahead and get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm John French, and I want to thank Ariat for putting on this masterclass, and thank all of you participants for sending in your questions. And I hope today will be a very informative class. Okay,
let's get started. So I will ask Robbie first for your question.
Hi, John. Thank you for doing this class for us. So I am older. I recently started riding again, and I'm fortunately going to be able to buy my first horse. And I was wondering, what tips can you give me to choosing a hunter?
First off, when I look for a hunter, I look for a horse that has a kind eye, looks like he enjoys doing their job. You don't want a horse that's cranky or, you can tell doesn't really love his job. So a horse that has a good attitude. I also look for a horse with a good neck. I think is really important, the way the neck is put on to be a hunter, because it balances, the neck is what balances the horse. And if your horse neck is not put on well with an arch and it goes the wrong way, it's probably not going to have the very good balance for you. And depending on your level of riding, the neck should be a little more uphill if you're more novice, as a downhill, a horse that's neck is built very low and downhill can be a little harder for a novice rider to ride. So it depends on, what level that you are in your riding. And those are probably, the most important things. That also, I guess I would say that the stride too, that, the horse has enough stride for the level that you're doing. A trainer might have a horse, be able to ride a horse with a very large stride, and they might want that for doing the 4 foot or something where the strides are longer. But with an amateur rider that's maybe doing the 2.6 or 3 foot, you want enough stride, but you don't want too much stride on the horse, because it'll be hard for you to regulate the distances in the lines. So depending on the purpose of the horse, I also sort of check if the horse has the right stride for that purpose.
How about, let's ask Emma for her question.
Great, thank you. Hi, John. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Thank you for doing this. I've been riding just quarter horses and Western and stock saddle for all my life, but the pandemic and a little before then, I have started taking my English riding and then hunter jumper classes more seriously, and I'm really enjoying it. So my question, and I'm in Southern California, my question is, I'm really loving it and enjoying it and want to keep pursuing this, even though I'm maybe starting a bit later as I'm in my 30s, but I can afford to get myself to local shows, and I'm not sure how far I want to take this, but what advice would you have for someone who is maybe in my shoes? I can't afford a $100,000 horse, let alone a $10,000 horse right now. Maybe, I'm not sure where I want to take it yet, but I guess, how would you recommend you pursue this when resources are limited?
Well, for me, growing up, resources were limited as well. I was able to ride other people's horses occasionally and get into the show ring that way, because we couldn't afford to buy those kind of horses. But as an amateur, I think you don't need a $100,000 horse. If you're doing the local circuit and local shows, there's great horse shows for starting out, and that don't cost as much money. You don't want to go to the A shows that, even if you're in the smaller divisions, it costs the same amount of money. The stall and everything can be extremely expensive. So, I would recommend starting out at the local, county, unrecognized horse shows. And you just want to make sure you find one that, they run a nice show, they have good footing, and start that way. And, if you do get a horse, then I would get a horse that's older. If you're just starting out, that's maybe coming down. His job is sort of coming down instead of, some people make the mistake that we don't have a lot of money, so to get a horse, so I'm just going to buy a real young green one. The person is novice as well, and that doesn't really work out. I think it's better if you're a novice rider is to get something with miles and experience that's maybe, like I say, on its way down, then go out and buy the young 4-year-old or 3-year-old, which people make a lot of mistakes doing. And then when you get to a better level of riding, then maybe you can afford to get a younger one. But if you're saying that you just started getting into the hunters, then I would recommend getting an older horse with experience.
How about Susan D?
Hi, John. It's great to meet you. I've ridden for a lot of years, but it's been mostly dressage, and I'm moving back into the hunters. And one of the things that I want to do is the derbies, but I have a horse that really likes jumping very long. And I'm wondering what you would suggest for working with him. I do a lot of gymnastic type of work with him, but he consistently wants to take off from quite a ways off.
Well, first, you'd want to make sure that the rider or you are not causing the horse to want to leave long. That the position, some people, when the horse wants to leave long, they want to lean back and sort of protect the horse from leaving long, but they end up getting a little behind the stride and sort of sending the horse forward where they think they're making the horse wait. But the fact that they're getting behind the horse and too much horse is out in front of them, then the horse will tend to take the longer distance. I would practice poles on the ground, adding strides. You set up a line that's maybe 6 strides and do it in 7, 8, and do this over poles or small jumps, because it might also be that the horse is thinking that the jumps are bigger or a big deal, and you want the horse to think that it's very easy, and incorporate that in your flat work, the poles on the ground. And like you say, if you've been doing gymnastics, set them a little shorter, but set them, not very tall, so the horse is not anticipating or nervous at the height, that it's super easy and low. And another thing that I would do is put a pole maybe 2 strides out in front of a jump, put it at maybe 32 feet, 30 feet. And so you jump that pole, and it's always a little easy 2 strides in front, and they have to practice, coming in easy. You're not going to want to rush at the pole, because your horse might get 1 stride in there instead of 2. But if you keep setting the distance in front of the jump easy, then the horse will start thinking it's easy and not wanting to leave so long.
How about Carrie?
Hi, I have a jumper that I've leased for a year, and we're doing the meter 10s currently and getting ready to move up. But I have an issue with him that he does not like to give me the full lead change. He'll either change leads in the front sometimes, or I'm having to land on the lead in my jumper course, because he'll just canter around on a cross canter, or he'll do a counter canter. And I can still find a distance off that, but obviously it's not easy or desirable. Is there anything that I can do as far as exercises, building up his hind end, or is it just a timing thing?
Is work on the transitions into the canter. If your horse sort of runs into the canter or speeds up into the canter, it's probably going to speed up and rushing and get too long in doing the lead change. So as you're working on the flat, I would do a lot of transitions, picking up left lead, right lead, left lead, right. As you're going around the ring, not necessarily the correct lead, you could, practice the counter canter, which I think is another good tool of teaching the lead change is teaching the horse to counter canter and relax on the lead and realize when you wanted to stay on that lead and when you wanted to change leads. But another exercise I think is very good is putting bounce rails to do the lead change on the flat. I set them up close to the ring fence, usually not on the diagonal, because I don't like practicing a lot of lead changes on the diagonal. They're either going, straight across the ring towards the ring fence or towards the short end of the ring, maybe 3 strides from the end of the ring, and setting them about 11 feet between the 2 poles. A lot of people just do 1 pole, but I think the 2 poles really helps in the lead change, that the horse doesn't want to go as quick through it because it has another pole to go through. So the horse tends to sort of get back on its hind end inside there. And even if it maybe misses the lead change over the first one, if it's anticipating, it fixes it and learns how to fix it over the second one. But ideally, you want to jump the first one, stay on that lead and not get the lead change until over the second one. But you keep coming around on the left lead and then turn right, and on the right lead and turn left, and really teaching them that signal of the the outside leg and just a slight opening of the inside rein, ask for the lead change. So I think that is, for me, is the best exercise that I do for teaching a horse lead changes.
Let's go to Pamela.
Okay, hi, John. I would like to know, in an amateur owner hunter class, what are the top 2 or 3 things a judge looks for in a jumping round?
Well, I think it's similar in all jumping rounds, what the judge looks for. In an amateur round, you look a little more for suitability and the horse's appropriate horse for that amateur. But the judge looks for quality. You want a horse with quality. It's turned out well, conditioned well, good weight, moves well. All that is when I'm judging, I consider quality. And some horses can come in the ring and they're starting at a 90, because of their quality. They have the ability to get that score. Some horses come in and the quality, it's not a good mover. It's not looking very well. The quality of the horse is not the same. And maybe that horse starts out at a 78 and, then could get any deductions from there. So they're not sort of on the same playing field. And then you just look at their way of going, that they go. For an amateur, you'd want one that goes sort of relaxed and is not speeding up or rushing the jumps, and has just a nice, slow, easy rhythm for the amateur. So you look for way of going, and then just the round itself, that the rider met the jumps well without speeding up, pulling back, didn't have to do that much, the lines, didn't have to steady so much, didn't have to push so much to make it down the lines. It all just seemed effortless.
Okay, let's go to Tara.
John, I know the best way to become a better rider is to obviously ride more, but as a full-time working mom, that's not always possible. So I'm wondering what your favorite resources are for improving at home, whether that be workouts, videos, research, reading.
I have students that, ride with me that come from, live in other places. So they're not with me all the time. So, and their horses are. So I always tell them when they're back at home, I want them working out and staying fit, more so like Pilates and yoga, things to strengthen your core, working on balance, being able to do things on one leg, which I'm not very good at, but and then reading. I read a lot of books, not only training of the horses and the riders, but also training for competing. Books on other athletes and how they get ready for, it could be football players, tennis players, how they prepare mentally for competition, how they get into the zone. But then also, watching, there's equestrian coach that Bernie Charik has. There's a lot of, videos now online. Watch and learn just by watching good riders ride. And so if you're not able to be there and you're not able to ride that much, watch those Kent Farringtons, and though he's not a hunter rider, but Scott Stewart, Liza Tao, those are your top hunter riders that you want to ride like.
Let's ask Sue for her question.
Hi, John. Thank you for being with us. I have a younger horse who's from Europe and was trained as a jumper, of course. And he's of the quality to do the hunters. And I feel as if it would be a good place for him for now, whether he ends up doing the jumper ring or the hunter ring, to help him slow down. My issue right now with him is that the last 2 strides before the jump, he tends to rush. And so we've set the jumps low. I work at the walk and the trot to jumps, and that's coming along really nice. He's relaxed, but still in the canter, we consistently get past the distance in the canter. So do you have any suggestions for us?
Yeah, I think trotting, that's good to keep a horse that wants to get quick on the other side. But in the canter, I like to set the jumps on a horse that wants to rush close to the end of the ring, so there's not a big several strides on the backside where the horse can get quick, and make shorter approaches to the jumps, like roll back turns to the fence, and not have like a 10, put a fence on the side of the ring and have 10 straight strides to the jump. I would work on short approaches and short approaches after the jump, because normally if a horse gets quick in front of the jump, he's quick on the backside of the jump. So short approaches and maybe stopping afterwards. If you get the horse quiet on the backside, then it's going to be end up learning to be a little bit quiet on the takeoff side. If you're pulling it up or having the ring fence help you pull the horse up, and have downward transitions on the backside, if he knows that's coming, then I think less likely to rush. But the only thing is when you're doing those transitions and you're trying to slow the horse down, again, so many people think when a horse wants to get quick that I want to lean back and stop the horse from getting quick. And you have to be able to stay in the center of the stride and really grip with your thighs and not change your upper body position at all when you're trying to slow the horse down. That's the same thing on the flat. When you do, poles on the ground, you should be practicing adding and practicing not changing your position and getting behind the stride, trying to slow the horse down, because in theory, then too much horse is in front of you and the horse will speed up because you've now positioned yourself in the back of the stride.
Okay, let's ask Kim.
I am going to start showing in the derbies this year, and we just had a 2-foot derby that had 40 entries. So there's a lot of competition. I show in the Sacramento area, and what I'd like maybe some helpful hints from an experienced writer like you are what are 2 things that I can focus on during my round? I know to have the sharp, clean press close and all of the great clean tack, but are there 2 things you think a judge sees in a rider that impresses them? I mean, when you're up against 40 other riders, are there two things I could focus on as a rider to maybe stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, you would have determined what your horse's strengths are. And if your horse is a beautiful mover and carries a nice pace, then you want to show off that. And you want to go to the first jump with a good canter and showing the judge that, that you really mean it. And this horse is, that it's going to be good, instead of going to the first jump and being tentative and slow. Like I say, show off your horse. If your horse is good at making turns and make tighter turns in the handy portion, then show that, show off doing that. If your horse is a really good jumper and can do the higher options well, then do those. Anything that you think that your horse is good at, then show that off and show the judge that, so he pays attention.
Okay, Robbie, do you want to ask your second question?
Okay, so what are some exercises that I can do to help see the distance?
It's really three things: balance, rhythm, and track. So to work on those three things, balance, I would do a lot of transitions on the way, sometimes on the way to a jump, canter, and then maybe 10 strides back, walk, then pick up the canter, getting your horse to have the proper balance on the way to the jump. And when I talk about balance, I want the horse carrying himself and not being too downhill. And you think when a horse is balanced, if you were to loosen the reins, the horse would stay the same. If it's not balanced, if you were to relax the reins, the horse would start speeding up. Is probably because it's not balanced. And then rhythm, I would practice the poles and set it at the right, maybe obviously because you're not jumping a real jump, you'd set it a little bit shorter than, say, if you're doing a 4-stride 60 feet, you would set it at, 57 or something. But practice the right pace between the jumps and the poles. So that is a good practice for your pace or your rhythm. And then the track, I would set poles in a circle or in a square to a jump, or maybe a couple of them would be jumps, a couple would be poles, or all four in a square that would be all poles. And you would practice maybe 4-5 strides between the poles, and you'll see that where your track is having problems. You'll maybe see tracking to the left, your horse bulges out to the right, and between the poles it seemed kind of long. Or you might see tracking to the right that your horse doesn't bend very well to the right and is leading in, and now the poles seem very short. So you kind of get an idea what's going on with your track, and why maybe it's the bending or whatever, why that your track is off on the way to the jumps. And those are the things that you practice, as well as you could also count too. Practice counting, practice picking the last 6 strides to the jump, or counting out loud when you think you're 3 strides back. But all those things to practice balance, rhythm, and track will help you find the distance.
Emma, do you want to ask your other question?
Yes, please. Thank you. John, I am still somewhat recovering from a broken collarbone, and I think you have experience with this as well. I have another surgery coming up soon, but anyway, what advice do you have for coming back from an injury, the physical part, like what the doctors are for, to take care of themselves, right? But mentally preparing, emotionally preparing, when it could be really scary to start going over jumps again.
Yeah, I think just doing it. I had a horse trip and fall on me and broke all my ribs 3 years ago. And for a while, I was anytime a horse started to trip, I would be like, better not trip, or I'm gonna fall off. And I always read books to get confidence and see how other riders have gone through injuries like this or broken their leg. And Ken broke his leg really badly, but he worked out, made sure that it was strong, did exercises. The doctors said it's strong. I'm sure your collarbone, you might think it's going to break again, but it's probably even stronger than it was before with all the calcification. So that's one thing. You can't go worrying about breaking something, or because if you ride in fear, then you're just going to be very timid. So you would just start jumping or whatever, wherever you are with your riding, and just start lower again until you get the confidence. I think you go out and start right where you left off. Maybe you go back a few notches, see how easy it is, and then slowly move back up to where you were before.
Susan D.
I'm looking at wanting to go start with the derbies, and we're limited on the types of jumps that we have at the barn. How do you prepare? How do you suggest preparing? Because some of the jumps at the shows are very different than what we would have at the barn.
Yeah, I think that you just have to be creative. I mean, I didn't grow up with being able to jump show jumps or be able to afford jumping show fences, but you can jump barrels. You need a little brush, a log. Those are the kind of derby fences that you mostly see as more natural jumps for the derbies than bright colored flowers and things like that. You see natural fences. So if you're able to ride it cross country, I'm not sure where what part of the country that you are, but if you can ride cross country in bigger areas instead of just a small ring, because normally derbies are in the bigger ring, and sometimes at the bigger shows move to the Grand Prix ring. So you want to ride in bigger areas to prepare your horse and get the horse's stamina up. But I think as far as the jump, you can find carpet, the AstroTurf carpet, and drape it over a rail and make it look like a solid coupe, with green tarp over it, or like I say, just natural things. I don't think that necessarily the derby jumps are supposed to be more spooky. They're supposed to be more inviting, and what horses used to jump out in the riding cross country.
Looks like we have time for a couple more questions. Let's have Carrie a question.
In the same vein as Emma's question, now I don't have a lot of show nerves going in usually to the ring, but I think if I tend to do well early, I do feel pressure to continue to try to do well. And so sometimes my second day will be worse, and then the third day will be good again. What are some books you recommend? Or, I know it's psychological, but it's still not easy to control. Is there anything you can suggest that would help with that?
Yeah, there's a book called Mind Gym that I recommend. A book called Relentless. For me, when I go to a show, like a big show, and then I feel, well, almost less pressure than when I feel like I should do well, because I almost like to be sort of the underdog and be like, I'm not going to do that well. And you have to think of the times when it was good, like what were you thinking and what was your mindset, and then you try to recreate that feeling instead of, the first day you might have been thinking this, and the second day, you've changed and you went to thinking, God, I could be champion, or, if I just think exactly how you prepared and what you were thinking and try to recreate that same feeling again.
Tara, do you want to ask your other question?
I'd love to, thanks. I've got kind of the opposite problem of some of these ladies. I'm actually going to my very first show exactly a month from now, and I would like advice on kind of show day rituals, what you do to kind of get yourself there, and how to not blow it when I finally get there.
Make sure that your horse is quiet, and because sometimes we know horses go to different places, they're not the same as they are at home, and you want to get into the ring in the morning, or if they have the ring available, just so you get a feel for the ring. You feel comfortable being in there, not over-schooling, not overthinking. You should have done a lot of your homework at home, so that you're not out there jumping a million jumps until something goes wrong because you just thought you needed to jump that many jumps to get ready for the ring. So keep it simple. When you have a few good jumps and it feels good in the warm up, go with it. Don't over school. Have your horse be prepared and feel the same way he does at home. Sometimes you'll go to a show and you didn't get your horse quiet enough, and then it doesn't feel the same. It's not the same feeling. It's not the same ride. You want to try to recreate that same ride at home because you're probably, confident and you're pretty good at home. So you just want to prepare your horse to be the same way he is at home, and pretend that this is just you being at home and you're just schooling. It's not anything different.
Thank you. I'm going to save the recording of you saying you're pretty good at home, and that's going to maybe be my ringtone now.
Okay.
How about Susan Moon?
Talking about the same horse, the European horse, he's a great jumper because he's a little bit looky, but it also happens that he seems to be triggered by new visual clues a lot, trying to get him to be more confident in my leadership, and that's definitely paying benefits. But I wonder if you have any tricks to deal with horses that are looky and suspicious.
Well, some horses that are looky, people tend to ride them sort of, oh, he's nervous here, so I'm just going to sit really still and chilly and not have very much contact. But instead, the horse might be quiet at first, but then if something happens, then you have to overreact. You go from nothing to grabbing onto them. So, one thing I would recommend is that you don't overreact and you get the horse in front of your leg and on the bit and ride it a little bit stronger and a little bit more of a frame. So when it does spook, you have the horse. It's not going from no contact to grabbing onto it. I would do a lot of slow work, sitting trot, using your seat to sort of relax them, but also using your seat to get the horse in front of your leg and going by things as slow as possible and keeping the horse in the frame instead of daving them and riding with no contact and no lag because you're trying to relax them. But I mean, that might work at some instances, but then when they do want to spook, all of a sudden you have to grab hold and overreact, and then that's what you want to try to avoid is overreacting to anything. But again, I would do it slowly and instead of going by things, cantering by them, and take your horse to as many places as you can. Go to friends' barns, as more places as you can get your horse more experience, that you can get him seeing different things. Eventually, he'll get better.
Okay, everyone, I think this is all the time we have. I want to thank you all for coming on, and I know we've learned a ton from this class. I know I have as well. It's been super fun, and want to thank you again, John. It's really been great.
Again to Ariat, and thanks again to all of you for your great questions, and hope I see you someday at the horse shows.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay.